students and teachers and parents,
Yeah.
instead of all the different components we have been cobbling together up until now.
Right. All right. Well, so we're here today for a special person and star of the day, however you want to title it, whatever works for you. The presentation that I have is basically a 3-hour presentation that I'm just chiseling down, and we're just going to take out what we want and leave what we can't. I won't hold anybody hostage. It's a little sweaty today. Nobody wants to be held hostage on these crazy days. So I'm going to share my screen. And again, please interrupt me. Okay. So here we go. And I am going to and I'm going to rely on you, Marianne, for comments. Okay. So I kind of sold this whole thing to you that PBL or the special person could be a project that carries you across your whole year. And that was one of my it's been a district buzzword for us in the last 3 years. And none of us went gently into the light. And I would say, though, that I finally found how, with adjusting my view of PBL, it does actually work with world language. There are many components to PBL. You have to have a driving question. I'm going to talk about each of these and how special person fulfills that. Driving question, got to give the students voice and choice. They need to have an in-depth inquiry. There's got to be an authentic need to know, not just some fake thing that you're putting out there. They have to have opportunity for revision and reflection. There's got to be a public audience. Some sort of a service that it provides needs to have significant content, and they need to develop 21st century skills. You can see why that's overwhelming, right? You've got to have a project that has all of that. And everybody was like, see ya, not doing it. But if you wrap your brain around it, there's a teacher named Brett Chonko, and he has he wrote a blog about this, and that's what this whole presentation was based off of, his blog. And his statement was, our goal is to explore, reaffirm, and celebrate everyone's uniqueness within the community. And by doing that, we can make an amazing PBL that fulfills all of those requirements. So the first one is that we need to have a driving question. What's the driving question with a special person? Because I mean, I do this with my very beginning students. These are students that come in with zero language experience. So what driving question could they have? Special person, what makes you you? What do you want to become? What is your role in your community? And those are my driving questions for my whole special person inquiry, is that I want to know what makes you you and how that makes you a part of this community, how it makes you an important contributor in this community that we're in. I've got some great language acquisition quotes in here that I want to share with you as we go along. This is crashing. Language acquisition, amazing. The best methods are there for those that supply comprehensible input in low anxiety situations containing messages that students really want to hear. These methods do
Amy,
not—
I'm sorry. Can I interrupt you? Are we recording?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And this will be on your YouTube channel later tonight or tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
No problem. I'm glad you're asking. So the best methods are there for those that supply comprehensible input in low anxiety situations containing messages that students really want to hear. That's it. Talk about what they're interested in and you're going to hook them. These methods do not force early production in the second language, but allow students to produce when they are ready. Recognizing that improvement comes from supplying communicative and comprehensible input and not from forcing and correcting production. When I do my special person interviews, I give them all of the supports that they need. I give them the question, I give them illustrations that might help, and I give them what their response framework would be, as well as what the third person response would be, so that when I ask the class, they can then fill in and give me a response. So if I said, "What is your name?" and you said, "My name is Mary Ann," I could then look at the class and go, "Is her name Mary Ann or is her name Betty?" And they'd say, "Oh, her name is Mary Ann." "Oh yeah, her name is Mary Ann. Her name isn't Betty. That's ridiculous. Her name's Mary Ann." And again, you see it last week when we talked about circling. I start to circle the information. As we start with the special person interviews, they're very basic those first few weeks, especially with a first year. Obviously, with second year, you can move on and do other things, but first year, it's your name, it's your birth date, it's where you're from, what you're like, it's what you do like and don't like. It's those basic things. So guided interviews are called special person interviews, and I conduct them in my class twice a week. It doesn't interfere with my regular schedule. It's just a portion of my class, and I spend about 10 minutes interviewing the student. This is probably a 20-minute total chunk of my class. So I interview a kid, and it will depend on the kid. Some kids want to talk, and then I go with it. If you find something that's working, stay with it and go. If some kid shares some funny detail with you, then, I had a kid accidentally tell me that they were instead of saying they were 14, they said they were 40 or something like that. Okay, well then we're talking about this 40-year-old kid who's in 7th grade, and what happened that you're 40 and still in 7th grade, right? And we make a silly story out of it, and you play with it.
Amy, question for the special interview process.
Yes.
And you're spending about 20 minutes total during a class period, 2 classes per week. How might this look differently in a blended learning situation or in an asynchronous learning situation for this fall?
Yes. So, for an in-person, if you are meeting synchronously, in the fall, I've got a couple different scenarios that I am looking at. Number one is that you can interview a student ahead of time, record it, and that would obviously work for asynchronous. You could do a one-on-one appointment interview with a student ahead of time. And my only concern with that is with new students, you haven't had the opportunity to build the relationship yet. So that's something that we're going to need to troubleshoot and work with, because with the camaraderie of the class really lowers the affective filter, the things that are going to restrict the kid and make them nervous to speak. And so a one-on-one interview is going to be like, and so that is a concern, but that is one option, is recording ahead of time. Another option is I am spending my summer learning how to stream. I'm going to be a big gamer when I grow up. How to stream. It's actually a great platform where I can share my screen. I can bring in a guest and have the whole class in a chat with them, which I could certainly do with Zoom. I just find Zoom, in those situations, it's hard to control all the microphones, right? But you could certainly do that, and pin the person's video and share your screen. That becomes the thing, making sure that the student can see your prompts, right? Because you need them to have the crutches. You need to be able to point to a screen for them to share information with them that they can then go back and forth with you about. Right?
True. And for those of us who use Canvas or Blackboard, any ideas for those people?
So I think with those, it's going to have to be a pre-recorded, unless you're doing, I'm trying to think. I don't know how Canvas works interactively. I'm familiar with Blackboard a little bit. I mean, unless you're doing a chat response interview, right? It gets tricky in Blackboard. Do you have oral interaction with Blackboard? I don't remember. I think it was just a chat. It was like a webinar. If I,
I'm not sure. I personally must use Google products.
Right.
We are not allowed to use Zoom. So Google is what we're going to.
Yeah. So Google Meet is certainly another viable option.
Because I think I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think as long as you could have either via Zoom or Google Meet all your students together,
Yep.
especially if you didn't start this until, you wouldn't do this in the first week of class.
No,
you would spend some time, even if you're doing it online, remotely, building some relationship with students, and you can have a volunteer student to be your special person, and then you would just simply, with the whole class all together on that grid, you would introduce that person to everybody else, interview that person. That might even lower the effective filter even more, because they're not physically in front of a whole bunch of people. They're in front of a computer, and the people aren't really there. It's just like images on a screen, and they might actually be a little bit more forthcoming.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, so I mean, with you can have the Google Meet going. You could always have the student on a separate phone and speakerphone them as you're interviewing them. That's another option. Again, that they're not face to face on the camera feeling awkward there. There's a lot of possibilities, and it's all going to depend on what your specific technology for your school is, what your technology is at home, what you have available to you. But phone call, speaker call with the student, Google Meets, pre-recording and sharing the video. You could certainly you could create. See, the key here is that with special person, you want to get the repetition of the vocabulary. So where I was about to suggest some sort of a Flipgrid sort of video that you could create, but then again, the students aren't getting the back and forth. The key here is that the kids are going to hear what you're saying back and forth and back and forth. If you had a pre-recorded, you could stop. You could ask them a question and stop the video and then go back and forth with your students. Now, did she say her name was Mary, or did she say her name was Betty? And then you could have conversations over a video, not different from a movie talk of sorts, right? You could interview a student, and again, it all comes down to the comfort level of the students. And that's one of the things with special person, is that I do not force them to go. I wait until they're ready. So I take the volunteers first. So it is going to be, as you said, it is going to be important to build that relationship with them with activities those first couple weeks. Get to know them, set some basic, comprehensible, high frequency language with them that they're starting to be able to maneuver a little bit with, before you dive in and say, hey, come on up here with me and do this, right? So let's see, I'm in the wrong presentation here. I just got to make sure that I get back to where I am. Okay. Are you all still seeing my green screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, really quick, I just want to interject. So I don't call it special person interview, but this is how I start out year 2 and year 3 and 4. And it's a great way for in year 2 to review like just present tense and conversational past. It gets the kids interacting with each other. And then in level 3 and 4, again, they have to review some basic present tense stuff, some conversational past stuff about what they did during the summer, that kind of stuff. And it just is a nice way for, and also if you had kids who all weren't in the same classes from the previous year, you know, then they get to know each other a little bit better and builds that rapport for the rest of the school year with those kids. So
Sure. And part of the big thing, one of the big things about PBL, project-based learning, is that you give the students voice and choice to talk about what they want to talk about. The key to this kind of teaching working so well is that we're talking about what the kids like the most, themselves. What are they interested in? Themselves and their interests. So if we give them voice and choice about what they want to talk about, they're going to be more plugged into this sort of thing. So as a teacher, we have to help the students give voice to what they want to say. This is where it tweaks. We give the kids voice and choice in other classes and they're like, oh, I want to research this. I want to research this. But project-based learning for students in a world language classroom, we've got to help them voice what they want to say. We're kind of providing that information for them. The structure of the CI classroom is set up to give the students voice by providing engaging input through talking about topics, stories that interest them, and allowing them to provide ideas and suggestions to help guide the direction a class will take. So we pull in what's important to them to be part of our class. Special person interviews allow for exploration of student interests through guided support questioning. Interviews unfold in a manner that allows students, after gathering of basic biographical information, to choose the line of questioning that interests them the most. For example, so this is my springboard page of my special person, and it has basic information. What's your name? Do you prefer another name, or do you have a nickname? How old are you? When is your birthday? Where do you live? What do you like? And I look for personality. What do you like physically? Describe yourself, maybe. Those are basic things that I work back and forth. I do the ones the kids want to answer if they're like, you know, but I give them a lot. My slides in my special person interview have the numbers, they have the months, they have the dates of the week, they have states, they have countries when I'm asking where they're from or where they live. You know, and I give them all of those. They're never floundering. When I ask them what their personality's like, I have a whole screen of personality traits for them to choose from. The majority of them are cognates that they can eyeball and know comfortably what they are. And then I give them voice and choice. Okay, you've given me your basic stuff. What do you want to talk about? And this is how I do it with my older kids too, is that once we've got, like with my older kids, my Spanish 2s and 3s, I can breeze through that this first slide takes me boom, 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 and we're done, because they know all this stuff, right? But I get here, and now I can take it to a higher level. What bothers you? What are your likes and preferences? Tell me about your childhood. If I want to go back in the past, tell me about a funny story from your childhood. What are your wishes and dreams? And so I can take it to more advanced grammar for them. And again, these are all just things that I have gradually added. My special person presentation, like all of my other presentations, morphs and changes as you get ideas. You'll see somebody else's presentation, like all the ones that people are sharing in our Facebook group right now. Go in, take what you like, leave what you don't, you know? But give, and I'll say to kids, is there something on here that you want to talk about that's not here? And then I know I've got to add a slide if they've got other ideas. And here's the key. This is a key in my class. Try just for the moment to forget you're a language teacher and to listen instead as an interested participant. You just want to be in there with a group of people that are talking. You want to forget that you're in class and that, wow, this kid has stuff to share with me and I want to absorb it and listen. And that's the key to building these relationships that means so much to the kids. So this is a huge and important thing for us to figure out how to do effectively if we have to be distance learning. It is, because it just changes the whole dynamic of a class if you know what a kid likes and doesn't like. You know, kids share things that you're like, gosh, I can't believe you're telling me this. But it's because you've created, and that's part of the PBL. Part of the service here is that this is therapy for these kids. They feel so comfortable with this group of people that they can share. They can be honest and real. They can come in and say, I'm struggling in this class and I don't like this and I can't do that. And, so you want to make sure that you're asking what they want to talk about. Special person interview. Here are the basic rules. Don't be bored yourself. Be a good listener. Talk about the student's interests. Pull stories out of the student. And they don't have to be real stories. Like, I love it when I get to, do you have a pet? And they're like, I don't have a pet. I said, didn't you have a pet unicorn? Or wasn't there a huge pet crocodile that lived in your closet? And you give kids permission to change their reality. Who you tell you are is who you are.
Sorry, just to interrupt for a moment. Natalie has a question.
Sure.
How do you get the other kids to really listen to their classmates as well as as you listening? For myself, this is where I'll have them taking notes while the person is being interviewed. I put my kids on Google Docs so that I can see their notes, and from the person who takes really good notes that I can kind of rely on, I actually base some quick quizzes from a few questions. So that would be one way. Any ideas?
Well, and I mean, I do in a way treat it as I do telling a story, that I'm constantly going back to the crowd and asking them a question, and then I'm going back and I'm confirming with the person, did I get that right? Is that what it is? And then I'm going back and at the end, so I'm going to jump down a couple slides. The process of the special person interview is that you interview them, you report it to the class, you then verify with the person that you're interviewing, and then you check for understanding. 5 and 6 come later. You check for understanding from the quiz. So I'm constantly doing comprehension checks and asking questions and trying to trip them up and making it silly and fun. Now, part of this is that you have to train them from the beginning. As I'm teaching from that first day of school, I've got my rules posted on my wall. You're going to sit up straight, square your shoulders, and give me your eyes. I expect everyone to have eye contact with me. I do. I literally stand in front of the class and I go, gaze upon me. Gaze upon me. And they laugh at me like, are you out of your mind? And I'm like, yes, now gaze upon me. I make them look. I make them sit up straight. Their hands are in their lap. They're focused on me. They have to repeat what I'm saying if I'm doing choral repetition. I don't generally call out a student individually. If I ask for an answer, I let somebody yell out. It's important to demand that that's the process of the class. That's how it works. And you have to teach them. If I get to a point and I realize someone's not paying attention, I literally stop. I point to the rule on my wall. And I point and I stare. And I give them my teacher look. And then I read it.
Can I interrupt again? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was wondering, Cindy, if you could please mute. There's some sound like wind or something like that, making it a little challenging to hear. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm very careful in those first few weeks of school that I am training them. If I say something to them, if I say, she said her name is Mary Ann, and I would expect the class to go, wow, and they've got to practice having ridiculous responses. She lives in North Dakota. And everybody would have to go, oh, I expect, and I reward them for being clowns. That's it. You're plugged in. So it's training. You have to train them. You know, I tell people this is relationships. You teach people how to treat you. So this is how I expect you to be. This is what we're going to do. All right. So I personally do not usually have them take notes during. Lots of people do. There's no right or wrong there. My personal preference is that I like to follow up. So if my interview takes about 10 minutes, I then like to do a follow-up 10 minutes of write and discuss. And I'll say, okay, so what's her name? And then somebody say, oh, and I'll go, you know, and I encourage them, if you can give me a sentence, give me a sentence. We've just done all this repetition. And they'll say, and they'll give it all back to me. Sometimes as I interview, I'll jot down a couple keywords for them to help them remember. But then I'm writing and it's popping up on the screen and they're filling in the gaps. And based upon what we create with that write and discuss, that is what I'll use as a reading. If I want to do a reading and questions, or that is what I will use for my follow-up quiz that I would do the day after, where I ask them, okay, now write me X number of sentences to tell me what you learned about this person. All right, so that is one of that's how I keep them engaged. And I have to say the training, I think just training them is one of the biggest obstacles. It's just putting in the time. You know, I'm the person that I have 5 kids and they were not allowed to sleep in bed with me, but they wanted to, you know, and it was worth the crying, that like the week long, like teaching them, right. I mean, if you've got kids, and you didn't have them sleep in your bed, then you know what I'm talking about. It was worth the week of no sleep, getting them to stay in their bed for what came afterwards when they would stay in their bed. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope. Yeah. So it's.
And then maybe before we move on into in-depth inquiry,
yes, ma'am.
We have a couple of questions.
Great.
Kind of wondering what your class setup is like for this. And I suppose, you know, your classroom setup is totally different than your distance learning setup. Is the special person sitting all alone at the front of the class?
So this is an interesting thing. My class is set up I have gaming chairs in my front row. So my front row it's like stadium seating in my classroom. Front row is on the floor. And so they think I'm letting them relax, but the chairs actually tilt to the perfect angle because it's for gaming to look at a screen. So they're aimed right at my face as I stand right in front of them. And then the row behind is in regular classroom chairs. I do have a deskless classroom because I have a small classroom and I have a lot of kids. Generally, I have between 25 and 30 in a class.
And you use Textivate.
I love Textivate. I could do a whole session for you guys on Textivate and how much I love it.
Oh, wow.
But to explain more, so I have stools. And so my special person is on the stool. And I said I do not call on kids. I let them decide. They usually on their own accord, have created a waiting list. And they stick it to the board like, well, you're going, I want to go. And then they've got their names up there. I'll come in, have come in from a prep period and they'll already be in the class and somebody will be sitting on a stool. I won't even have set the stool out and they'll be sitting on the stool going, it's my turn today. So I have had occasion where a kid wanted somebody else to sit with them, bring up another stool. I've had occasion where I've had kids, can I have a stuffed animal? Absolutely. You can have whatever you want. You want a pirate hat? Go get a pirate hat. Whatever makes them comfortable. And that's okay. Because again, the whole thing we're building here is community. Language is our tool, right? You know, you teach science. Language, we're teaching the language to teach everything else, right? We're manipulating the language to build a community with our students. And so did that answer the question? And were there others? Text-Evade I use as a follow-up to special person.
Yes, that's an excellent answer. And Brian also mentioned that that's his experience as well. Lots of kids love to be in the spotlight. He rarely has to beg for volunteers, which is great.
Yeah.
And it's really fun that you use your stuffed animals. I've got a whole bunch of Beanie Babies from years ago, and I use those a lot. I don't have a lot of hats, but I do have a couple of puppets. And
the key is getting the day or the couple days after Halloween, going to Target or Walmart and getting everything 70% off.
Oh, good idea. 70%. Yay.
Yes, that's where all my props and my crazy hats come from.
Okay,
I have stolen some toys from my children, but don't tell them.
They probably didn't notice. But anyways, yeah, Textative. Can you kind of give a brief, like, I don't even know what Textative is. I'm totally in the dark about that.
So Textivate is, it's a website. No, that's okay. It's a website. It's textivate.com. It's from the guy who made it, Martin Lapworth, is out of England. So it charges you in euros. So I think it comes out to roughly $50-ish a year. It is worth every penny. Ask me of all of my subscriptions, what is a must-have, and it is Textivate. You can take any text that you have and you can paste it in. And then you can take key vocabulary words and add that in. And then Textivate will, with what you've inputted, and I can input and create an activity in 15, 20 minutes. If I've already got it typed up, I copy it and paste it. I put in a couple vocabulary words and boom, boom, it's done. It's a fast process. And then it'll differentiate it. It'll create all sorts of games and activities for different level students, right? So if I've got kids that's struggling, it's got easier things that they can do and be successful at. And then it's got gradually more difficult ones. And you have the ability to create a standalone activity. You have the ability to create what's called a challenge, where you would divide your class into teams, and then they would go in and work on these different activities, but everyone works on whichever activity they want to work on, and they earn points for their team. So nobody's like, oh, I can't do this, I'm not contributing. Everybody is contributing because there's something that everybody can do. And then you can also create, like if you wanted to do it as an activity, an assignment or a homework assignment, you could create what's called a sequence of activities that you could say you have to do this, 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 and this. You could say you can only move on to the next activity if you've gotten this percentage correct. You can do all sorts of things, and it also has a grade book, so it'll tell you what their progress is and how they've done. It really is a phenomenal reading activity for the kids. Just a repetition and processing. It's got matching, it's got switching, it's got who wants to be a millionaire. There's a soccer game. There's, flashcards. There's all sorts of different things. There's a million activities.
And would you say, Amy, that it is kind of like Conjugamos?
No, not at all. Conjugamos is practice with verbs, practice with vocabulary. This is specifically looking to interact with text. Whereas you can take your specific text and put it in. So I tell a story or I do an interview and I put it right into the text. And now my students, like, one of the best things to do is that I can divide a story or an interview, and I can say 6 by 3, and it'll do 6 rows by 3 rows, and they'll have to put them in order. And you can do big, so it's really hard, or little. I could say 3 by 3, right? Or 2 by 4, and say, put these 4 chunks in order.
It sounds very intriguing. Somebody mentioned that they paid more than $50. It was more like $67. Do you think that,
It certainly has to do with this, with the exchange rate and all of that. So I'm just going off the top of my head. It's possible that it was 60. Yeah.
okay.
It does it in euros, and then my my math skills and my you know, my just off the top of my memory, I've got so many different subscriptions.
Yeah, same. GimKit, etc.
But again, I would say of every subscription that I have, Textivate is the one that I won't live without. Textivate is the one that I'll pay for if my district won't pay for it.
Wow. Can you create a class within Textative, like an Ed Puzzle, so that you can, you know, grade easily?
Yes, it has a grade book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you put in, you can import. You don't have to hand put in every student. You import from like Canvas or Blackboard or whatever your program is. And it then creates a student username and password. And they have the ability to just go in. If you're doing a challenge, like a competition in your class, they don't need to sign in. But if you're doing an activity that you want to track, they sign in with their username and their password, and they can, it'll go right into your grade book. Very easy to work with.
Did you have to receive permission from your school district to be able to use Textivate? If I'm saying that correctly.
You are.
You did?
No, oh, no, you were saying it correctly. Sorry. No, my district is not. No.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's some, like, for example, in my district,
they doesn't really care what I do.
Okay, you're very fortunate. My district is strictly Google. Maybe I'll have them look it over though and see if I can't use it, because it sounds ideal for story writing and you know, keeping track of what they know and don't know, and creating instant games.
Just thinking about workarounds, you have the ability to print activities that if you only had the account, you could print them. So like if they had to reorder things, there are some activities that can be printed out that are, it's also very well worth it. It's also something, I'll post it on a screen and say, okay, what comes next, and have them work together and do it that way. So it's something that you could personally use and not necessarily give access to students if it didn't work out.
And then also there's a basic subscription for 25 pounds and a premium subscription for 50 pounds.
Premium.
And the premium subscription is the one that equates to about $67 American right now. Yeah. I was wondering, do you have the premium or do you have the basic? And what would be the difference? Would the basic be worth it?
The premium, you can do much more with the premium. There's very little you can do with the basic. You have much more mobility within. There's a lot of limitations with that, with the basic.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so I'm just jumping right back in. Keep interrupting me. I'm glad for these questions. In-depth inquiry. In the foreign language classroom, the teacher uses the language to build a common understanding. Foreign language is not the object of instruction. It's the form of communication. We just already talked about this, actually. In our classrooms, it's not, this is not self-driven inquiry, as students do not have the appropriate proficiency level yet to accomplish that. You can't send them off to do the research and think you're going to get something back unless it's with Google Translate, right? It's just, they don't have that ability, and we have to understand that we're going to have to adjust a little bit to that. So the teacher's the only one with the necessary language skills to drive the inquiry in your class. Provide the input and the repetition, and this is going to make the language comprehensible to them so that they're doing their in-depth inquiry. Student-driven and teacher-facilitated. That's how it works. In the foreign language classroom, the PBL model gets inverted. In science or social studies, history, literature, you'd send them off with a topic. Here, you've got to do the facilitating in the classroom. It's got to happen there. The point is to provide more exposure to the language, and the teacher is the only one who can provide that.
And with the teacher being the only one who can provide that, how is that going to look in a blended learning environment for this fall?
again, it's going to come back to how we decide to conduct these interviews. I'm going to switch screens that I'm sharing. Here it is. So this is, hold on, I'm just going to move this. Escape. Excuse me for 1 second. I'm having trouble organizing my screens. Here we go. So this is my special person presentation. And for it to be productive for them, they have to see it, right? So we're talking about, I'm the only one providing the input. They've got to have visuals that I can point to. Remember, I have my giant cursor that I've made here that I can point to. What is your name? You know, what is your name? I could say, is your name Fred or is your name Mary? My name is Mary. Oh, your name is Mary. So I've got, you know, I can give them crutches. Where are you from? I am from Massachusetts. I can go through all of that. Birthdays. How old are you? You know, what are you like? So in a blended learning situation, however we're doing it, we have to make sure that the student can see what we're doing. Student has to have these crutches or it's going to be an epic fail. That's, you know, whenever I do a story with my students, I also have a screen that has all of my most high frequency vocabulary. I have question words down one side. I have joining words down the other, and, with, but, those kind of words. I have the most commonly used verbs along the top and the bottom so that I can support them. If I'm interviewing them and I'm not using these crutches, then I'm using those in the first person singular. So I can say, where do you live? And then I've got I live. Okay. And they'll say, I'll point to it. And they'll say, I live in, I'll point to in, and then help them through that. But we have to be the crutches. And so in a classroom, it's no problem because I've got posters everywhere. I put all of my high frequency verbs. I have the hardware for window shades hung in my classroom. So, and I write with Sharpie marker on the window shades. I put the Spanish in black and then the English in red, or vice versa. It really doesn't matter. And then if I have to answer a question, I can literally go up and go whoosh, and pull down my window shade and go and point to it.
That must really just shock the kids. I mean, really,
always,
so
the
cool.
first time I was like, what is she doing? And then having it is, well, my room is a little unpredictable, but having the hardware mounted for the window shades, I have multiple shades. So if I know what I'm doing, I take one out and I put another one in, and it's like having a bunch of these different banners to work with. So that's, again, I'm talking about giving crutches to the students. I have banners that I post everywhere, and I have these window shades that I pull down, and then the specific vocabulary to whatever story or interview I'm doing is on my whiteboard at the front of the class. Ask me questions.
I think that a very important question here would be, we don't have windows because we won't be in a classroom.
Right.
So how could
none of my shades go on my windows? First of all, they go on my walls.
Okay. but
yes. So now the question is then, how do you have to have a comprehensive PowerPoint presentation. That's your first thing.
Okay, or Google Slides or whatever you might.
I'm saying PowerPoint. I don't even use PowerPoint. That's just like that's the catch-all name. PowerPoint, okay. Keynote, Google Slides. You have to have a comprehensive, supportive program that will give your kids what they need. And then, you know, I can show you as well. I'm going to show you. It'll be in Spanish, but I just want to show you what I'm talking about with oh, excuse, let's see. I'm going to show you, forgive, that was for a story we were telling, sorry. But I'm going to show you my support slides. And this is where I can, now, I put this up and I can put myself a text box in the middle and start typing, right? And I've got the support here. This is my third person singular slide, present tense, right? So if I am talking, this is a story more than anything. But if I'm interviewing somebody, here's my first person singular slide. So now if I were interviewing somebody and I was not using my PowerPoint special person, I mean, I could flip back and forth. I could certainly put this slide into the PowerPoint presentation and jump back and forth if I needed to do that. It's just going to be a matter of juggling. This is why I'm liking the idea of streaming, and I can certainly do a session to show people what that would look like. I would be streaming through, I'll stream through YouTube. But I can—
Wow, that would be amazing. Now, on YouTube, Amy, you have the ability to do more than just 20 minutes. For example, I had a YouTube channel from years and years ago, and I wanted to put my meeting that we had, you know, on my YouTube channel, but it would only give me 20 minutes. You, on the other hand, you've been using it for quite a while, and then YouTube will allow you to leave an hour-long video on yours. So what do you got to do to be able to work with YouTube to be able to get longer videos?
You just have to have a channel. You can have longer videos.
Yeah, I'm only allowed 20 minutes.
Oh, you just have to tweak your settings. And off the top of my head, I don't remember. It's very easy. I have to double check, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. You can post any length video you want. It's a very simple setting. It's just a matter of me Googling it real quick.
Okay. And then one question for the group. We would love to have these slides in English and German, and it's sounding like Christine Webb is offering to make these slides and then post that to the CI German Bitmoji group so that we can all use those. Thank you very, very much.
I think that's wonderful, and you have my permission to do that. I think it'll be easier for you to work in the ones that I already shared. The presentation is too huge for me to send as a keynote to anyone. So the one that I shared is in Google Slides, and you can do with it what you want. You have my permission to.
Is that shared in the file? Did you upload that to the files in the group?
I have shared my special person. I will share this. This is this presentation that I'm currently in is my basic presentation that I use when I teach a class. I have to read a disclosure. We do some songs. I do my calendar talk. We do weather. We talk about quarantine. I do a picture talk. I don't do all of these every single class, but this is my, we do a riddle. Somebody moved that. We do a reading. We'll do a reading, and that has questions and talk about it. And then I get into interview questions and all that stuff. So this is a huge, this is a monster thing. And so I'll share it with you when I share it. Again, Google Slide doesn't allow you to compartmentalize like I have it in this presentation. So it'll just be like 5,273 slides. But please feel free to do what you want. And maybe I'll learn some German, which I want to do. So.
Thank you very much, Amy. That's very generous of you.
Yeah. So going back.
We're also very interested if next week, Wednesday, we could do a streaming meeting so we could kind of get an idea what that's like. Because juggling between slides must be quite tricky. And you're doing an excellent job at it, but it must be because you've had a lot of practice with it.
Yeah, I've had to practice, and it's a lot of management. Yeah, so I haven't actually, it would be my first flight with the streaming. That could be exciting. Yeah, let's try it.
Oh, we would love to be your guinea pigs. I'm thinking everybody's a yes on that, a yeah? Give me a yeah in the chat if you're yes.
Because it's super easy. And I think you're gonna like that there's not the switching between presentations. It's literally, it's a scene switch, and it's boom, hit a button and you go to another view, and it's another slide, and it's like, I almost look like I know what I'm doing. It's very exciting.
No, everybody is saying yeah, yeah, and we've got a C and a yeah and a sicherlich.
Yeah.
What platform? Will it be via YouTube? Wunderschön. Will it be via YouTube, my dear?
It'll be via YouTube, and then it'll automatically also record right there onto YouTube. So it'll be available. So what I'll do is I will post the link to my YouTube channel and the time that I'm going to go live. And when you go to my YouTube channel, it'll say Amy Marshall is, or DMS Spanish is what I am on YouTube. But I will post more specific information, just like I have for these last two meetings for that. Okay, and so we'll get a feel of how that will work for special person interviews.
That would be fantastic. Yes, let's practice on each other before we get to the classroom or, classes.
Let's do that and see how it works. And maybe what I'll do, maybe Marianne, I will pipe you in as a guest so that they could see what it would look like to have a guest in the meeting. Like if I were to interview.
But that'd be really super. But I wonder if I shouldn't conduct the interview, because then you could learn some German.
Ach, das ist gut.
Cool.
All right, so so let's see, we'll hammer those details out. But let me talk a couple more seconds here about special person. We talked about the process. We talk about authentic need to know. The whole conversation is taking place in the target language when you do this, even from the very beginning, because you have the supports. You have either your presentation or you have them hanging on your walls. And remember, we're going slowly so that the person feels comfortable to think. And by going slowly, we give them time to process. So it takes place in the language with support. And if you're truly facilitating the creation of community and fostering it, students will genuinely care about one another and have an authentic need to know about what's going on within their community. It builds, I think I shared this last time, when I did special person in my one lower class, I had the one kid that raised her hand and said, I love this class because when we come here, we're all smart. We all know what we're doing. And they're the class that's stigmatized because everywhere they go, everybody's like, oh, you guys are the dummies. You guys, they're the kids that have the IEPs, and they're kids that struggle, and they're kids that, being successful for them is not a daily thing. And so when they come in, because you've built that community, that's the whole beauty of this whole thing. And so providing supports like this makes everything worthwhile.
Amy, this reminds me of a student that I had. It was quite an unusual case in all my years of teaching. I'd never run into this, but she was hospitalized even for tremendous, it wasn't shyness. It was more like, I don't know, paranoia in a way. I mean, it was quite serious.
Yeah.
And even if I were to walk from one place in the room to another place, she would get so nervous she would sometimes just run out of the room.
Oh.
I don't know what was going on exactly, but it was way beyond the norm. Have you ever run into a student who just simply could not function in the CI classroom, where it was too much noise, they were too anxious to participate for whatever reason, and how would you deal with it?
I have, and I mean, I've had usually it was linked to a lot of other stuff going on in life. So it was, in many cases, they were missing my class, but not because of the noise or the insanity going on in my classroom. But I have been, because what we do, like if I'm doing a special person interview, because I create documents to go with it, because we write up what happens and we know the power of reading. Although I think that you guys get the short end of the stick with the readers. You don't have nearly enough German readers that you can use. But
that is correct. I would love for someone to provide stories. Oh my gosh, that would be so amazing.
Well, just on a side note, Myra Canyon, who writes, she writes the books that I use in my classroom. They're amazing. Beginner, like, she knows how to deal with language to make it comprehensible. She's fluent in German.
Her name is Myra Cannon. Is that Cannon?
Cannion. I've told her I'm going to make her join the group. But I've already said to her, why aren't your books in German? And the truth of the matter is that it's a small enough segment of the market that it doesn't make sense for her to take the time to do it. So she's saying, if there are people that want to work on it, she's open to having somebody work on translating her books.
I don't think that any of us here would have any objection to helping her doing that. And there's 242 of us. If we each took a story, that'd be a lot of stories done in a very big hurry.
Well, we're talking about books, so novels. So there's got to be continuity. And she's
okay.
Yeah. So it's certainly something to talk about, because these would be such wonderful tools to have for your classrooms. But
that's the problem. We just don't have the supports that Spanish and French do.
Yeah, so that's something to think about for us to talk about, but I've completely diverged. The kids that are anxious, the kids that can't do it, I give them the reading materials. I give them the texts that we create in class. I let them do the text-of-8s. I do the readings, and reading is key to acquisition. The more they read, the more they're going to get. So give them that time. They're going to be more connected to you for understanding that they can't be there. Say, here, why don't you take this to the library and go read it? Or why don't you go work on this in text-of-8 on a computer or on a laptop somewhere and do this. It's not worth the stress that it's gonna cause if you're truly building community. You've got to understand for that. And again, the reading is the most important thing, or you can give them what we call a horizontal conjugation. I give them a reading in the first person and say, or in the third person and say, write this like you're the main character now, and give them practice. Or sometimes I give them something in the past and say, write this in the present, So it's, I think everybody's so charged right now. And I keep saying, this is my phrase, show grace. Just give everybody grace, because when they can come along, they'll come along. When they can do it, I mean, if they sense your sincerity, they'll come along when you let them come along. Let them sit, let them watch. If they want to be the last person to do special person at the end of the year, let it be. If they can't do it, they can't do it.
We do have Alicia, who is asking if we could please do a session at some point on how to teach a novel or story using CI.
Yes, it's my favorite thing in the whole world.
That's the thing I find most challenging. So that sounds like a great idea.
I love teaching novels.
Okay.
All right.
And Janice is saying that her budget is $83 for 200 students, and she would love to find free online readers.
Free online readers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in German?
Yes, ma'am.
They barely exist in English. I mean, they barely exist in hard copy. We got to work on that.
Yeah.
We've got to work on that. I've been thinking on this, and again, we're completely off topic, and I hope that's okay. But my thoughts were, number one, you have a strong enough community here that you could create videos and text for each other to support each other. You could create a flip grid where teachers fill in grids with topics You could have basic information. You could have my house. You could have cooking, and teachers talk in comprehensible language and do 1 to 3 minute videos, just talking comprehensively that anybody could go, okay, I'm going to use this in my class, or I'm going to assign this to my class and use it as a video. You could do that. We could create, I mean, stories that you've done with classes now, and it'll grow. Create a file in a shared Google file and just share documents of stories with titles and like what your 3 basic structures were, or what, and create a database that you guys can go to at any point. Because when I finish a story with students, I have a finished document because I share it in Textivate, or I print it out for them to do something with. I almost always have a good finished product that I could put in a file and share, except that it's not in German. Do you know what I mean? If we created a shared drive for people to contribute to, and maybe we could classify them, present tense, level 1, level 2, whatever. I mean, however, we would have to discuss that. But that, I mean, talk about needing materials and having possibilities. There are a lot of options out there that if you mobilized as a community, you could do that for each other until we get more books. Anyone?
Yes, I think that's a wonderful idea. And wow, yeah, as we create throughout the year, we could just come back here, and under each topic, we could add our little 1 to 3 minute video. And then that way, instead of reinventing the wheel every single week, we can help each other out. That sounds like something amazing. So, and then Brian Brian has shared a free resource for storybooks for German, and Christine has also provided storybooks as well. So thank you very, very much. Everybody check those out.
That's awesome. Yeah, so like with the videos, if we created a German flip grid, and then within it created topics, and then people, as they felt moved, you know, I like if I were doing myself, I could say, hi, you know, introductions. Hi, my name is Amy. I'm 50 years old. You know, and just give basic, slow, and then just make a list of topics, and people could add videos to those topics. That's
sounds excellent.
You know, and then it's just something to think of, you know, as a way to create resources for yourselves, you know, and then go from there. So, but same thing with the writing. The more the merrier.
All right. I'm not very familiar with Flipgrid. I'm more familiar with WeVideo. I'm not sure. Yep. I suppose you have to have a Flipgrid account to be able to see those videos, or you'd have to have a WeVideo account to be able to see the WeVideo videos. Not sure if those cost money or not. WeVideo is supported by our district.
Flipgrid is free. I don't know about WeVideo.
Oh yeah, Flipgrid's free. Oh, that'd be really the best of all then.
And Flipgrid, you can create a mixtape. You can do a bunch of different things, you know, mix of videos and things. I mean, you could have a file and give students options. There's different ways to share them. You can share them in Google Classroom or whatever your platform is.
I'm going to suggest then that perhaps one of our upcoming resource meetings or PDs with you be about Flipgrid, so that we can learn more about that.
Definitely. We should definitely do, maybe we could do a double between Flipgrid and Textivate, or maybe just do one where we talk, we hit on the technical tools that we can use.
Yeah. Perfect.
So I've got, I'm in my brain, I've got list of spontaneity as being one, brain breaks was another one people wanted. So now we're talking technical tools, and we're going to do streaming next week.
If I could just say something, I've been to some of conferences before, and when they throw all this technology tools at you at once, you're very overwhelmed. So if we could just like focus on 2 of them very well.
Yes.
And, like, really, and not like throw all 10 of them Cynthia. At us.
Great idea, Cynthia. I agree with you. It does get, especially if you're not, you know, I'm using it all the time, so it's second nature to me at this point, but I need those reminders. Yeah. So we'll do one for Flipgrid and Textivate. So let's do this next one is going to be streaming next week. And then the following one, we will do Flipgrid and Textivate and whatever else we have. So I think here that we've got some good ideas about what to do. I've only scratched the surface, like I said, on my special person. The key here to take away is that the most important thing here is that to build community, you've got to build trust. To build the trust, you've got to give supports and crutches for the students. So we've got to figure out how to do that for them. We need to have a good presentation that we can lean on. We need to have good visuals in our classrooms that we can lean on. And from there we can do it. Now, if you want, I have on my YouTube channel, there is a playlist called Teaching Videos 2019-20. And almost most of those videos are, it's a 6th grade class and it's special person interviews. It's how I start my warm up my class and then I do special person interviews. So if you want to see how I conduct some of them, just to get an idea, please feel free to take a look at that. You can see them, how it's working in person. Now that's not distance learning. But again, we're going to have to wade through the muddy waters. Next week with the streaming will be a good answer for us to how it works with streaming. And you'll see what I've got set up and see if it works. We'll see what it looks like. You guys will all be texting me next week. It'll be a chat as opposed to all on video. If I have a guest in, then that'll be the only person on the video. Other questions for me? Anybody else? All right, I hope you were able to get something out of this. I know we sidetracked a lot. There's so many, we all have so many questions and there's so many unknowns. They're all reasonable and good questions. So like I said, as far as you're very welcome, everybody. As far as special person, I've got lots of interviews for you to look at if you want to see what it looks like. Of course, it's in Spanish, but there's a lot of supports on there, so you should be able to follow. All right. So I will see you next week. I will post the information about the stream and on the Facebook page, and we'll go from there.
Thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome. I will share this video by tonight on YouTube. Yeah.
Wow. You're awesome, Amy.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks. Thanks for coming, everybody. It was great to see you. All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.